Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast and on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod. We want to say thank you to all of our new viewers from our last few episodes. However, a lot of you are not yet subscribed, so be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have not already and smash that notification bell because it really helps out our channel a lot. Also, drop a comment down below. Let us know where you think Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson will be playing in the 2021 season. Today, we will be making our NFL offseason predictions. How's it going, guys?
I'm good, Drew. I'm really excited for this episode. A lot of crazy predictions for all these players. Some traded, some signed in free agency. But, based off the free agency franchise tag news yesterday, some guys are off the list. Some guys are unfortunately on the list. If you're Lions fans, that hurts. But I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I agree with Roman. It would have been a little bit more interesting had, a guy like Allen Robinson not been tagged, so we could talk about him as well today. But, nonetheless, we got some big names on here. Most of them free agents, a couple of them guys that we expected, especially at the quarterback position, guys that we almost are guaranteeing to get traded. Maybe in Russell Wilson's case, someone might pick the Seahawks, but I know I will not be to spoil that. But, Drew, let's jump into it, man.
Okay, so the first guy on the list is Alex Smith. He, of course, had a miraculous recovery. It looked like he was going to lose a leg, and then he came back last season, won comeback player of the year. I won't say led Washington to the playoffs, but was definitely played a big hand in helping them reach the postseason for the first time since the Kirk Cousins era a few years ago. So really nice season for him, but unfortunately because of cost, because Washington wants to move forward with a different quarterback, maybe in the draft, maybe one of these guys listed here, Smith is now a free agent. So I'm going to predict him to go to a team that Roman actually joked about in our group chat before we recorded here, but I think he's going to go to the Bears just because it makes a lot of sense, I feel like, for both sides. Not to spoil one of my later picks, but I do envision them getting another young quarterback, not named Mitchell Trubisky.
I see who it is.
Not named Mitchell Trubisky. And I think Smith could play a really big role. He's former number one overall pick, which, again, not to spoil it, could help this next young player out with just transitioning and living up to expectations, and just be a really big adult in the room. And the Bears, I mean, they haven't had stability at the quarterback spot since that one season a decade ago when Jake Cutler was kind of good, and then that of course ended miserably. So I think getting an adult in the room, they obviously already have Nick Foles, so I think they're going to look to trade him in a salary dump move, or maybe just cut him, or maybe just keep him and just eat the salary. Who knows? But I think Smith to the Bears just makes a lot of sense, even though Roman, I know you made fun of it earlier.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I'm going to jump into it as well. I'm also going with the Bears. I think it's a perfect destination. He's got the familiarity with Matt Nagy. I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, the fact that he won a lot of games with Washington, and when he was healthy, I know his stats weren't insane, but they won a lot of games with him at the helm. So I think as a backup option, which I'm not going to spoil my pick here, but I also have another guy going to Chicago, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where we differ on that. But I think it makes a lot of sense for him. If the starter goes down with an injury, it's still a guy that can lead you to some wins, can complete some passes out there, won't make too many mistakes. He's a perfect guy as a high-end backup. And a team like the Bears that needs to win now with their current regime makes a lot of sense to have him as their backup.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also have another quarterback on this list going to Chicago. So I think all three of us have Chicago making some quarterback moves this offseason. But I did joke about Alex Smith going to the Bears, but it does make sense. And the Bears have had quarterback trouble for some time now. I mean, they're going to have a huge moves to make this offseason, whether bring back Trubisky or get another quarterback, go another direction. But I think they got to get someone who's experienced on the market. They're probably out of range for a rookie in this draft, and they need to come away with someone. They're unlucky to not come up with Goff or Wentz or whoever, but they're gonna get a veteran, and I think Smith would fit that role quite well.
Yeah, I agree, Roman. I think that Alex Smith going to the Bears makes a lot of sense. It's weird because Nick Foles is there already, but he's expensive. And yeah, he's had a few good seasons, won a Super Bowl, but at the same time, I think Smith just brings another good veteran presence. And I swear to God, if we all have the same guy going to the Bears also later in this thing, it's going to be pretty funny because I do think at least for the guy I have in my head, I think he's going to be a really good veteran presence for this player, who was also a former top pick, and his season's kind of gone off the rails a little bit, or his career, excuse me, has gone a little off the rails. So I think Smith will help him get it back on track. Similar to how Smith with the 49ers, then got his career back on track with the Chiefs, and then also with Washington. So I think Smith to the Bears just makes a lot of sense. But I'll hop in now to Russell Wilson. I mean, he's plenty of rumor destinations out there. The Las Vegas Raiders are really intriguing to me. The Panthers maybe is a pretty crazy prediction as well. I think the Niners, I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, maybe they do something crazy. But I hate to be boring, but I think he's going to the Seahawks. I don't think they're going to trade him. I know. I mean, I love the sexiness of him going to a different team. The drama. I mean, I think once eventually he does end up leaving Seattle, which I think he will eventually, either when his contract is up or when he gets traded maybe next offseason. But I don't know. I don't think it's good. I feel like the more realistic scenario that's going to happen is we have an incredibly dramatic filled 2021 season where like Wilson and Pete Carroll aren't talking by the end of the year, and then Wilson gets traded next offseason. I feel like the Seahawks are going to at least try to make it work. I don't think it's going to happen, but for this season, I feel like it just makes more sense that Wilson's going to stay in Seattle. But Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think Pete Carroll's going to be talking to Russell Wilson a whole lot. Playing for the Chicago Bears, my second prediction is going to be the Chicago Bears yet again. I know maybe Alex Smith going there as a veteran backup doesn't make a lot of sense if Russ is your starter.
Yeah,
this is an organization that absolutely needs to win right now. They can't bank on just one quarterback staying healthy. They need to have other options. So I think trading for Russell Wilson I think franchise tagging Allen Robinson's a sign that they need to make a big move at quarterback. I think if they wouldn't have franchise tagged him, a guy like the player you're naming later makes a lot more sense to be there. Maybe their incumbent starting quarterback in that situation. But I think them bringing back AR gives them a chance to trade for one of these two superstar quarterbacks. I think they're going to make a move for Russell Wilson here in a year that they absolutely need to win. And, maybe Alex Smith being predicted there as well, like I said, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, I think he's going to be a cheaper option as a backup. So I think they could get both guys. But I really think Russ is done in Seattle. And I think the Bears make the most sense for him personally with retaining Allen Robinson, giving Robinson finally a good quarterback, which them two together would be a really fun combination. But, Roman, where do you think he's going to go?
Yeah, I'll touch on Allen Robinson quickly because I don't think we'll talk about him much throughout the rest of the episode. But yeah, you're right about if you're going to tag him, you better have a plan at quarterback because he's been screwed his whole career basically with his quarterbacks going from Bortles to Trubisky. But like Drew, I'm going to stick with my Seattle destination. It doesn't make much sense for the Seahawks to trade him right now, even though they could probably get a huge haul for him. And to me, I don't like he listed the destinations he wanted to play at. He listed Dallas, but they signed Dak long term. The Bears were an option, the Raiders were an option, and the Saints as well. I think the Seahawks have the best defense, maybe out of all those teams, and have the best offensive weapons. I think it's I don't think he's going to necessarily be into a better situation at any other team. He's perfect where he is right now. And he has the offensive weapons. He's fine. He's perfect. Just get a better O-line, and you'll be solid. I think he doesn't have to leave right now, but I do agree with both of you when he's going to leave eventually. But this year, no, he's staying in Seattle.
I can agree with the offensive weapons, but there's an argument they have the worst defense out of any of those teams, maybe instead of the Raiders. But yeah, that's where you kind of lost me there. But yeah, I get what you're saying in terms of offensive weapons. In terms of receivers, he's got the best option, but they won't have Chris Carson next year, which we'll talk about him later, I'm sure. And their defense still stinks. Their offensive line isn't going to be any better because they don't have a first-round pick. I think it makes a lot more sense for Russ to leave than it does for the Seahawks to trade him.
Yeah.
But if they can get a lot for him, I think it's in the best interest of both teams. I think this is going to get ugly after this. If they don't win a Super Bowl, which they will not, they're not going to win a Super Bowl next year. I think that it's going to get ugly there in Seattle, and it's going to be an ugly exit rather than if he gets traded this year. I think things can be mostly clean for the most part.
Well, and Wilson's getting older. He's talking about his legacy and all this stuff. So the Bears pick though too, Chris, that doesn't make any sense to me if Alex Smith is also going there. If I'm being honest, but I do think it's going to happen. He's going to trade it sooner rather than later. And I just think it makes more sense that he gets traded next offseason, maybe to the Bears after they do this Alex Smith and another guy that we'll name later duo tandem here for this season. But we'll have to wait and see. So next up, the other probably biggest name on this list is Deshaun Watson. He, of course, wants out of Houston, but Houston apparently is still not picking up the phone when Watson trade calls come in. So I think that he's probably going to go to a different team, or he's going to hold out, even though the Texans want to keep him, it seems like. I was going to be really dramatic and just leave this list with like a blank space because I think Watson might hold out for the entire season, or at least most of the season, if the Texans don't trade him. However, for content purposes and for the purpose of the conversation, I'm going to have him going to the Carolina Panthers because their owner, he seems like he's very aggressive. They made it very public that they don't want Teddy Bridgewater anymore, which I find very interesting because typically, maybe that's the new norm. I mean, we saw with Jared Goff. It seems like in the past, at least, teams don't just outright say, hey, we don't want this guy anymore. And it seems like that's what the Panthers are kind of saying. They want an upgrade. They want to win sooner rather than later. And I think Deshaun Watson, for the trajectory of this team, I think Watson just makes a lot of sense. The Panthers, it's because he's young. He's controlled for a few more seasons. They have some pieces there. They're a very young team. Even though they're might not ready to win right now, I think they're ready to win sooner rather than later. And we saw with the Stafford trade as well. The Panthers were willing to give up a lot to get Matthew Stafford. And I think Watson's an even greater commodity, and I think they'd be willing to give up even more. And I think the Texans would be stupid not to pick up the phone at least and make a deal. So, but Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, with Watson, I think there's two good destinations for him, in my opinion. The Panthers are one of them. But since you went with the Panthers, I'm going to go with a different team, and that is the Denver Broncos. I mean, this is a team that absolutely needs Deshaun Watson to compete in this division with the quarterback and offensive players in this division. So I think it makes a lot of sense for him, and they got a lot of receiving options in Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Melvin Gordon as well, who just recently got off of his DUI charges as well. So he'll be back for next year, I'm assuming, as well. But, that's a team with a lot of options on offense, a defense that I feel like could improve a little bit this year. They had a lot of injuries last season. So I think him to the Broncos or the Panthers, both destinations to me make a lot of sense. But for content purposes, I will go with the one that I like a little bit more, but I still think the Panthers are a 1A, 1B.
That's interesting because I think when you look at teams who have the money to pay him and have the draft capital to give up for him, I think you're looking at the Jets or the Dolphins. I think those two teams are probably in the front runners for him. Although I'm not going to pick either one of them because I think the Texans might want to trade him to the NFC, get him out of the AFC. I think they're going to be a little stubborn at first, like you said, Drew, not trade him. He could either hold out or they might trade up. They might wait to the point where he's not as valuable as he is right now. I'm going to send him to the NFC, to the best division. If Watson were to go to this team, I'm going to go with the Niners. I think they're instant contenders if they get him. Unlike the Panthers and Broncos, I think Shanahan's offense with Watson would be a Super Bowl contender, no doubt about it. And I think that just adds to the NFC West. They're going to be great. They're going to be the best division ever, and that's a good prediction.
Yeah, I think he's going to go to an NFC team for sure. He could go to the Broncos, but it seems like the Texans, if they do trade him, they want him to go out of the conference to go to the NFC. And the Niners were probably the Broncos were on my board too, but the Niners were probably my second pick. I just think the Panthers are a little more willing to offer stuff because it seems like the Niners are, at least publicly, are a little more content with Jimmy G rather than the Panthers are with Teddy Bridgewater. And I think the Panthers can have a better package as well. So I think that the desperation of the Panthers as well as the better package could lead them to offering more for Watson.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, though, because even though we're not talking about Jimmy G, we don't have him listed. I think he might be on the move as well. I mean, you look at the Patriots, they said that Jimmy G is going to be their plan A this offseason. So if Jimmy G's on the move, then the Niners will be in the market for a quarterback. And I think Watson makes sense, even though they might not have the assets like the other teams do.
Yeah, it's interesting you just mentioned the New England Patriots because that's where I think this next player, Mr. Cam Newton, is going to go back to. He's been very polite about Bill Belichick in the media. I don't think the Niners, unless because I feel like the the only way they're going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo is if they maybe it's a 3-team trade or if it's something else where they get another quarterback in return. Personally, I think it's more likely they run it back with him for this next season and maybe get a better backup. Again, possible spoiler alert for one of the next few names on our list. So I don't think he's going to go to New England. I think New England will probably test the market, see if they can get some other guys that are also on this list, or even through some other guys that we haven't even mentioned through trades or something else. But I think it just makes sense for both sides that Newton goes back to New England, in my opinion at least. But Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I'm going with the Patriots for him as well. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense for both. I don't think the Patriots are going to be that great this year, and maybe they do end up drafting or bringing in another quarterback. But I think Newton, at least starting the year as the starter, makes some sense. He also, at the start of last year, he wasn't that bad, and then he got COVID and was an absolute disaster. So maybe that could have had something to do with it. You never know. If he comes back with some, obviously, a well-rested offseason or whatever, he'll be over the COVID spot. I mean, he even mentioned that he had some problems with COVID after it was all said and done as well. So I think, he's not as bad of a quarterback as he showed last year. He's also not as good as MVP and also other really good seasons with the Panthers. So, I mean, he's still a guy that can be a starter in this league, just not a very good one, in my opinion, but makes sense back in New England.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with New England as well. The only other destination I could possibly see him going to is the Washington football team, just because they're a very connection. But I mean, you got to imagine they didn't want him going to the 2020, so I doubt they're going to want to make a run at him this year, especially when they could get a younger quarterback. I have the Washington football team taking a quarterback with the rest of these on the list, and then they might even draft one as well. So I think they're good with where they're at, but I think just staying in New England makes sense for them.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh was an interesting option too before they re-signed Big Ben, and I think it could make sense for him to go to another team and be more of like a mentor role as well. But I think the Patriots just makes too much sense. At Washington, though, it could be a potential option there if they get a younger guy, he comes in and be like a nice mentor guy, like I said. But we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of mentors, Ryan Fitzpatrick was a great mentor last year for Tua. Was almost like the relief pitcher for the Dolphins. Whenever Tua was struggling, he was able to come in and really light up the scoreboard. And I think he is going to do the same thing this year for a team that Chris already projected earlier for Deshaun Watson going to, but I think it's going to be the Denver Broncos. I think I heard this on a podcast that I was listening to earlier in the week, and I think it just makes a lot of sense. It sounds like Fitzpatrick wants to go. He might retire. That is one rumor, but it seems like he wants to go somewhere where there is at least a clear potential for him to start. It's not just one of those things where he's just going to be like an Alex Smith situation where he is the clear backup. He's more of a mentor. Fitzpatrick still wants to play. He wants to do kind of the both, where he's a mentor, but he also has a path to playing. And I think with Drew Lock, I think the Broncos are going to strike out on either drafting a quarterback to help them win right now in the draft, as well as trading for a guy that could help them win right now as well. Because it seems like they want to win now. I think Fitzpatrick going to the Broncos just makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the Broncos as a destination. I know I already had Watson going there. I'm not gonna pick them for this, but that's probably my other good option for them. I think the Washington football team is where Fitzmagic belongs. I think it's a good destination for him. Fits the criteria of what he wants at a place where he can at least compete for the starting job, and I think he will there. Maybe they draft a quarterback to potentially back him up. I'm assuming at the start, maybe they take one of those more Trey Lance, a guy that maybe won't be ready day one, but we'll have to see about him because he is a very talented quarterback as well. But I think Fitzmagic will start a couple games for whatever team he ends up signing with personally.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to go with the Broncos, like Drew said. I think that just makes sense for what he's trying to do. He doesn't has the pressure to start right away, but can mentor the young quarterback in Drew Lock, who's having much trouble during his first couple of seasons. So I like Fitzpatrick to the Broncos, but if not, I think he might retire.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Washington makes sense too, Chris. Like you said, for much of the same reasons that Newton going there makes sense as well. Another team that came to mind too is the Niners as well, for much of the same reasons as the Broncos, where even though I said they have faith in Jimmy G, he's had injury issues, he's had performance issues in the past. There is a way that Fitzpatrick could play. And also, I mean, it's nice weather out there in San Francisco, nice place to kind of hang up end his career on a high note. But retirement is definitely a possibility as well. But with Mitchell Trubisky, this next guy, he's, of course, Chris's favorite player in the entire NFL, maybe second to only Jared Goff. And he was with the Bears last few years. Is much ridiculed because the Bears could have got Deshaun Watson, they could have got Patrick Mahomes, but instead they got Trubisky. And now it seems like he's not going to go back to the Bears, and I am also in that camp. I don't think he's going to go back to the Bears. I do, however, think he is going to go to the San Francisco 49ers to be a backup, because it seems like the Niners have been very public that even though they believe in Jimmy G, they want to have a clear, better backup option. And say what you will about Trubisky, but I think he showed some signs, some flashes at least last season, and then a couple years ago when he made a Pro Bowl, I think it was 2018. He showed some flashes that he can be a good quarterback. And I think in spurts, he could be a really solid backup. And he could be a guy, definitely an upgrade over what CJ Beathard and what Nick Mullins that they had last season. I think Trubisky going to the Niners makes a lot of sense. It's a really great situation, great offense. And I think Trubisky could actually, if Jimmy G does go down with an injury, hopefully it doesn't happen, but I think Trubisky could actually have a really nice year. And he could even maybe beat out Jimmy G for the starting role. Who knows? Because I think he could really succeed in that Kyle Shanahan offense. But Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, San Fran is but my exact prediction for him as well. I think it's makes a lot of sense for him to go there. One of the few destinations that maybe could be interested in him. I know Trubisky he's shown flashes, that's for sure. He's definitely shown flashes, but a guy that, needs to get his career back on track, similarly to the guy right under him. Just not as good. And then, I think this makes a lot of sense to have him. It's a low risk, potentially high reward situation for Trubisky, because if he ends up starting, he could show something. You never know.
That's interesting because San Francisco wasn't really on my radar. I only had two teams listed. One of them was actually the Patriots, because if there's anyone that can fix Trubisky, it could be Bill Belichick. But I'm going to go with my second team, and it's actually not that exciting. I think he actually sticks with the Bears on a one-year prove-it deal. I think maybe if he's behind a better veteran, I guess you could say, I think he'd learn much more from Alex Smith than he would from Nick Foles. So I think he goes back on a one-year prove-it deal. He did have a great second half of the season. I don't want to say led them to the playoffs, but I mean, he was a result of going to the playoffs. So I think he might go back on a one-year prove-it deal. But besides that, I don't really see a whole lot of suitors for him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't all pick the same team with the Bears, the way we were talking about Alex Smith to start the show, because Sam Darnold's the guy that I had going to the Bears for much of the same reasons that you outlined there, Roman, for Trubisky. I think Darnold, it seems like all the Jets want in return for Darnold is a second round or a third round pick. So I think the Bears could be able to trade that, get a guy in Darnold who could be a reclamation project. If you pair him with Alex Smith, he has a good mentor, as I mentioned earlier. I think it just makes a lot of sense for both sides. And Darnold, I mean, this was a guy who was coming out of college, coming out of USC. He was supposed to be better than Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen, but he of course sucks. And I think the potential is still there, and he's still a young guy. And I think just a change of scenery, I think it makes a lot of sense for Darnold. And even also, I don't know what you guys are going to put, but I think even him staying with the Jets too, just getting a new coach in there that's not Adam Gase, could help out a lot as well. But Chris, where do you have Darnold going?
Yeah, I'm going to be boring with this one. I got him going back to the Jets. The Bears is a pretty good destination, and maybe looking back, I would have picked him over Alex Smith going to the Bears. But I think, him going back to the Jets makes a lot of sense. I don't know if they're going to take a quarterback, or maybe they trade out of the pick or whatever. I'm not really sure what they're going to do. But yeah, to get the stench of Adam Gase off of this Jets team, it could unlock some things for Sam Darnold. You never really know. So I think it's too early to count him out in this point of his career. He shows flashes every once in a while of being more than what he's been. So I think, giving him another year in New York makes a lot of sense before they, just go out. They got a lot of draft capital over the next couple of years. Why not draft some skill position players around him? And if it doesn't work out, they'll be bad again next year. They got 2 first-rounders next year as well with the Seahawks pick, which also could end up being a really good pick if Russell Wilson. That could end up being a top 10 pick if Russell Wilson is gone next year. But so I think it makes a lot of sense for Darnold to be back for one more year, and then if it doesn't work out, they end up drafting Sam Howell or another guy that ends up in the top 5.
Yeah, it's still unclear what the Jets want to do, whether they want to trade down or trade Darnold to draft a quarterback. just to be a little entertaining, I'm going to have him go to the Washington football team, who is a much better situation for Darnold than the Jets would be. Even though they re-signed Heineke, I think they're still going to be in the market for a quarterback. They might be out of the range for one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. I think they're still going to get a young guy, and Sam Darnold doesn't have to take much to get him, maybe a second or third rounder. So I think that it makes sense to go there.
Yeah, I agree with both of your guys' takes. Kind of similar reasons as to my Bears take. I think Darnold, even though you have him staying with the Jets, Chris, I think it is still in a way a change of scenery because, as you said, Adam Gase is out of the building. So I still have some hope for Darnold. I mean, he's still, like I said, he's still young. I still think he has a lot of potential. So I drafted him in our Dynasty Football League for much of those same reasons because I think he's has a lot of potential and could still have a really prosperous career, maybe like a Ryan Tannehill, who also had great success after leading an Adam Gase-led team. So our final quarterback on the list, though, is Jameis Winston. This is a really tough one because we were all under the assumption that Drew Brees was going to retire and that Winston was going to re-sign with the Saints and be their starter. Now Brees is posting all these workout videos and he's looking like he might not be done and he might not retire. So it's really tough to call here. Ultimately, though, I do think he's going to stay with the Saints. I just my gut feeling. I think this is just smoke that Breeze is throwing out. I think maybe he's upset that he lost, but I just think even though it's tough because if Breeze wants to come back, it's hard for the Saints to be like, we're good, dude, because he's the best player in New Orleans Saints history by far. But last season he was just so bad, and I do think even in the playoff game against Tampa Bay, I think Winston showed that he brought an element of explosiveness to the offense that Breeze did not bring for much of the season. And he also has injury issues. I just think it makes sense for Breeze to retire, for at the very least him to be more of a backup mentor role to a Jameis Winston. And even if you just look at the way that they were talking after their loss to Tampa Bay in the playoffs, it was like Breeze was like, "You're the man, Winston. You're the guy. You're our next guy." So I think Winston's going to go back to the Saints, but I'm interested to see if you guys agree.
Yeah, I have him going back to the Saints. I think there's some interesting destinations that he can end up landing in if he doesn't re-sign with them because they don't have a ton of cap space. It might end up being the move for them to find another option, but I think it makes some sense for him to go there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the Saints, obviously, they're looking. They might be in the quarterback market. I mean, I thought Breeze would have retired by now, but I think Winston makes the most sense for him. I'd rather keep him over, or they're going to keep Taysom Hill and Winston, I think, for this upcoming year, and then maybe move forward with one of them. I think Winston is the future for them if they like him that much.
Yeah, I agree. I think Winston is a good option. And he had that eye surgery last offseason. Maybe that was a big deal, influencing how bad he wasn't even that bad for Tampa Bay, but he wasn't obviously as good as Tom Brady. He had a lot of turnover issues. But I think he's very similar to Darnold. I think Winston could still have a nice career in the NFL if he gets to the team. And I think the Saints could be a really solid option there for him, assuming Breeze retires or is okay with being more of a backup. But we'll hop in now to the running back and wide receiver predictions. First guy on the list, Aaron Jones, running back, formerly of the Packers. So this is, I looked up some rumors. It just seems like there's one team that is very heavily linked to him, a team that was a surprising playoff team for much of last season, but unfortunately fell off in week 17 or down the stretch the last few weeks. And that's the Miami Dolphins. I think they need an upgrade at running back. They got a decent guy in Myles Gaskin, I think, but he had some injury issues last season. I think that they're looking to win now, and I think they have the cash to go out and get a guy like Aaron Jones. I could see him potentially re-signing with the Packers as well, but just based on the rumors, I think Jones to the Dolphins just makes a lot of sense. But Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, the Dolphins, it's a good landing spot for him just because they have a running back opening. But I think with their current situation, Gaskin's a decent back. I think they're gonna get Najee Harris personally. So I'm not gonna pretend. I'm gonna be really boring here and say he signs long term with the Packers. I don't know how much I even believe this, but as of right now, in terms of maybe there's some cap casualties, the only other destination I could see and might be spoiling Roman's pick is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I don't know how they're gonna afford him either. I think it's a tough situation for him if the Dolphins don't end up wanting him, which there's another player that I, spoiler alert, think he is going to end up on the Dolphins here. But I don't know. it's tough for Aaron Jones. It really is. I'm not sure where exactly is a great destination for him. There's a couple other ones that are interesting, like potentially the Cardinals for me would be another one that I think is somewhat interesting, but I don't know how much cap space they're willing to give up on a running back either.
Yeah, I agree with Drew. I mean, it makes the most sense, I think, and I do agree with I agree with both of you in the sense that they're definitely going to be in the running back market, whether they sign Jones or draft Najee Harris. I think both are very feasible. But I think the best connection that I've been seeing is Jones to the Dolphins. So I think I'm just going to roll with that for now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Roman. So the next guy, Leonard Fournette, in my proposed universe scenario thing, I have Jones going to the Dolphins, which means the Packers have a running back opening. I think the Packers look at what Fournette did in the playoffs and look at how he destroyed them in that playoff game, and I think they give him a paycheck. I think he'll be a little bit cheaper than Aaron Jones, and I think he'll do much of the same. He's not as good as Aaron Jones, but I feel like he can still strive in that role. We saw him with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. He was able to have a really nice season, and I think especially a really nice playoff. And I think with another really good quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, obviously won the MVP, I think Fournette to the Packers just makes a lot of sense. And he can maybe even win back-to-back rings with two different teams, like LeGarrette Blount did a couple of years ago. But yeah, where do you guys think he's going to land?
Yeah, man, this is a tough one. The running back market's pretty tough this year, man. In my opinion, I think a potential destination that could be for Fournette is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think maybe they need some running back depth. I don't think they're going to re-sign James Conner. I think he makes some sense going to the Steelers here. And like I said, I mean, going off Aaron Jones, going back to the Packers, I really just don't know. I think this is just it's going to be there's a few good running backs in this draft class that are going to go as well. So I think that the free agent market for running backs, it's tough this year, man, and it really is. But I think the Steelers make some sense for one of these free agents.
Yeah, I would maybe throw Tampa Bay back as a return for Fournette, but I'm going to project him to leave. Both of your destinations make sense as well, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks, where they definitely need a running back one, and I think Fournette would maybe have the most or best opportunity there as the one.
Yeah, I think both of those options make a lot of sense. And it's funny, Chris, because I feel like we're just one team behind because I have Chris Carson going to the Pittsburgh Steelers for much of these same reasons that you had Leonard Fournette going there as well. I just think that they want to get an upgrade from James Conner. I thought maybe they were going to try and tank this season, but I think re-signing Ben and how good their defense is, they're almost have to be in win now mode now. And I think Carson, although he has some injury problems, I think he's still a solid running back when healthy, and I think him and Benny Snell could potentially be a nice duo there in the backfield. And I think Seattle, Roman, you got Fournette going there, and I think they're even content with possibly Rashad Penny, or maybe get a cheaper option than Carson, especially if they want to keep Russell Wilson and put more money in the offensive line. So I think Carson leaving Seattle makes a lot of sense, and I think him going to Pittsburgh makes sense as well.
Yeah, it's not a bad destination at all for Chris Carson. I think I have a very sexy pick for Chris Carson. That is the Buffalo Bills. They desperately need a running back. I know they didn't run the ball a lot next year. I don't think that was by choice. I think they just really struggled. Singletary is a good change of pace back. Zach Moss blows at football. But yeah, I think Chris Carson really makes a lot of sense playing for Buffalo. I think he's a talented back. He's what they need around the goal line. He can catch the ball as well. He makes a lot of sense in Buffalo. I don't know their exact cap situation right now. I don't know if they can afford him, but I think it makes some sense.
You're right. That would be a very sexy pick. I think the Buffalo Bills would be an underrated team to get a good running back. I think they might be in the market for ETN if he was still around.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, I have to agree with Drew here. I think Chris Carson will go to the Steelers, who definitely need a running back one after the departure of James Conner.
Yeah, and speaking of James Conner, let's hop into that as well. So in my proposed universe, I have Deshaun Watson going to the Panthers. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to be included in that trade. So I think the Panthers are going to need to find a running back replacement, and I think that's James Conner. I was really just in a bind here with this one, honestly. I think the Bills could be a potential option just because James Conner is in a really weird spot because he has injury issues. He's kind of good, kind of not good. And I think I guess Carolina makes sense if they don't want to spend a bunch of money on a running back. But like you said, Chris, it's a tough to find landing spots for a lot of these running backs. But I think the Panthers could be an option for Conner if they lose McCaffrey.
Yeah, that's an interesting proposal, but it definitely takes. I mean, it would be a crazy take if Chris McCaffrey doesn't leave. So I'm not going to go with the Panthers like you did. I have a pretty interesting destination for a running back that we haven't mentioned yet, and that's the New York Jets. I mean, they have a massive hole at running back. It makes a lot of sense for them to sign a guy like James Conner. I mean, he would be there. It would be a very good destination for Conner, both Conner and for anybody that owns him in like a dynasty league, because it doesn't look like he's going to get a starting job. But the Jets are one job that's open that I feel like not a lot of people have a lot of buzz around the Jets job being an opening. And I don't see them drafting a running back personally. Maybe they end up getting Najee Harris or ETN, but I think a James Conner as a veteran, decent presence for their running back room makes some sense in my opinion.
Those are some good points, Chris. I'm gonna go with the Falcons for my destination because they did have Gurley, but I don't think they'll bring him back, and they don't have much left between Brian Hill and Ito Smith. That's definitely not going to do the job. I think they're going to be in the market for a running back, and they're probably going to be out of the picture for any of those top rookies. So I think they're going to sign one. It could be Carson too, maybe Fournette, but I think they're going to go with Conner.
Yeah, I think all those options are very realistic landing spots for Conner. Like I said, also the Bills I think make a lot of sense as well. But it'll be interesting to see where he goes, how much he gets paid, because it seems like he's probably not going to get paid as much. But we'll have to wait and see. Hunter Henry next up. I'm going to be pretty boring here. I know they didn't franchise tag him, but I think the connection he showed with Justin Herbert last season. I think they're going to re-sign him and they're going to bring him back. So I have him going back to the Chargers. And Roman also has him going back to the Chargers. Chris, do you have a different take or different opinion?
Yeah, I think there's no chance he goes back to the Chargers, man. I mean, I think they would have signed him if they or I think they would have franchise tagged him. They aren't really having a ton of cap space. I think a good destination for him, and I haven't heard any buzz around this, is the Cincinnati Bengals for them. I think they need weapons around Joe Burrow. It's a nice safety blanket. They didn't really get much production out of the tight end position from Drew Sample or the other options. I can't remember the other dude's name that plays there, but he sucks anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I think Henry, they got some cap space this offseason. I think signing Henry in my opinion, I think Henry's overrated. I don't think he's worth $12 million or whatever, but I think whatever team signs him is going to have a lot of cap space. So like a Jets would make sense for landing him as well. But I think the Bengals makes the most sense. They need offensive line help as well, but I really think that's a good destination for Henry to thrive in.
Yeah, the Bengals are definitely second on my option list, so I think it's a good destination for him, and it would make sense in the development of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I think the Chargers it seems like I saw some rumors that they're maybe just trying to restructure his deal. They didn't want to franchise tag him, so he could go back there. But Joe Burrow and the Bengals make a lot of sense too, for pretty much the same reasons that Herbert and the Chargers make sense for Henry as well. But this next guy, Kenny Golladay, a guy near and dear to all of our hearts as Lions fans. I think after looking at this, I don't think this makes a lot of sense. I don't know how much cap space they have, but I'm still going to do it anyway. I'm going to go to Miami Dolphins because the reason I say I don't know how much cap space they'll have because I also have Aaron Jones going there. So I don't think they're going to be able to get both of them. But hopefully I'm right with one of these picks because I do think the Dolphins make sense for both guys. But I think if I had to pick one or the other, I think Golladay to the Dolphins is probably the most realistic to happen. But Chris, it looks like you agree with me.
Yeah, this is why I didn't have Aaron. This is why Aaron Jones is tough because I don't think he's going to go to the Dolphins. I think Kenny G is like almost a lock to go to the Dolphins, in my opinion. And they're not signing both of these dudes. So I think what makes sense is that they sign Kenny G to his massive deal and they draft Najee Harris. I think that's what they're going to do this offseason, and then they're going to take some offensive linemen as well in the draft, and then that's how they're going to retool to try to gear up for another playoff run. And to me, it makes a lot of sense. I think Kenny G is a perfect guy. Tua's got a strong arm. I know he wasn't able to, unleash it all the time because of their offensive scheme. But I think Kenny G being able to get those contested catches all the time, I think he created the least amount of separation in the entire league last year. But he also had that, he has over the last couple of years. But he also has these big time numbers. So it just shows how important a guy like that is that can, catch that 50-50 ball, make it more of a 80-20 ball when it's up in the air. So I think Kenny G to the Dolphins makes a ton of sense.
It's interesting to me because they could either get Golladay or obviously draft a wide receiver with their early pick with Jamar Chase, perhaps. But I do want to see Golladay with a contender. The Ravens, I think, make the most sense for him, but I don't think they'll have a chance of getting him just because of their bad cap situation. So I think the the winner in this signing is ultimately going to be whoever can pay the most money. I think it'll be the Dolphins.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. If I had to go back, I probably wouldn't put Aaron Jones to the Dolphins, but hey, it is what it is. Hopefully I get one of those right. Next up, Marvin Jones. I think this is another guy that could possibly end up with the Dolphins as well. I mean, I guess in my head, they just have unlimited cap space, but he was a guy that was rumored to go to them like as soon as you reach free agency. I'm not sure if that changes as his former Lions teammates is also now in the market, but it would be kind of cool if both the Lions just go over to Miami. However, I actually have them going to an interesting spot in Washington. I think they are trying to win now, especially they have that really good defense. I think they're going to make a quarterback move, as we showed on our last slide, our last tab, and I think they could use another receiving option to pair along with Terry McLaurin. So I think Marvin Jones Jr. to Washington makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I definitely like the Marvin Jones to Washington take there. I think that definitely makes a lot of sense to me. There's a lot of good destinations for Marvin Jones, and Roman kind of alluded to it there with Kenny G. I think he ends up going to the Baltimore Ravens. Personally, I think he's a little bit cheaper. He's still a decent option as a wide receiver guy that can make a big play for you. I think in terms of their cap situation, I think Baltimore for Marvin Jones makes a lot of sense compared to the Kenny G. I think also makes sense. I just don't know if they're gonna be able to afford him, but I think MJJ costs at least probably less than half of the price that Kenny would.
Yeah. Yeah, my reasoning is the same for this destination for Marvin Jones, a team that could definitely use him. A great connection with their quarterback, their very new quarterback. I'm going to send them to the LA Rams. Pair up with Matthew Stafford once again. That would be very entertaining to watch. And they might not afford him, but I think they should definitely inquire about it.
Yeah, I agree. I actually thought about the Rams as well, but I was like, I don't think they're going to be able to make it work with the cap situation. But maybe if he takes a little bit less money, wants to win a ring or something like that, which guys do all the time, and take if they sign that couple $1 million less than expected deal, I think that could make some sense for Marvin Jones Jr. if he ends up wanting that ring really bad, ring chasing, because he's got a decent amount of money saved up from all of his seasons in the NFL. So it makes some sense for me.
Yeah, they got Woods and Cup already, so I don't know how the fit works exactly, but he could be a really, really solid third option there in LA. Maybe even a second option as both Cup, and I think Woods too have had some injury issues in the past. But I'm gonna hop over to Juju Smith-Schuster now. I think he's gonna go to a big market. He loves dancing. He loves going crazy. I think he's going to San Francisco.
Oof. Wow,
which I think is a little crazy, but I don't know. They could use some receiving help. And I think I don't know. It just makes sense in my head that he goes to San Francisco to a big market. But Chris, it sounds like you disagree.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, it's interesting. It's a bold take for sure. I absolutely think there's no chance he goes to Sanford. And I mean, this is a team with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. I think the receiving help is the last.
All three though have injury issues. That was my thought process.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't want to spend $15 million on a guy just for an insurance policy when they definitely have some other holes to fill, a cornerback potentially and quarterback. I think both could be destination could be free agent homes, at least quarterback or a corner, because Sherman's out the door as well. My pick is directly under. It's basically the San Fran farm team, and that's the New York Jets. I think a team with a ton of cap space. They need some receiver. It makes sense pairing him with Denzel Mims, being a guy that can operate in the slot. You can move him around the formation. And they have a lot of cap space as well. For me, I think it's another destination. Not a big rumor or anything. Him going to the Jets, another big market. Which to me, it feels like the perfect home for a guy like Juju would be the Jets' rebuilding situation.
Yeah, my team is different than both of yours. It depends on what you think of these wide receivers. They just drafted one last year's draft, and they had a wide receiver who was kind of a bum, but then resurged in 1 year. And this destination, I've seen a lot of prediction towards. I'm gonna go with the Las Vegas Raiders for Juju. I think him and Henry Ruggs would be a good fit for Derek Carr, who's actually acquiring some value, raising his stock a little bit. So whether they want to move him in the future, I don't know. But I think getting some good weapons around him, in addition to Waller and other wide receivers they have, I think it's a good fit for him.
Yeah. Similarly to mine, I think it's a team with a massive need at receiver. Ruggs, obviously extremely disappointing. Brian Edwards didn't do a whole lot in his rookie year. So it makes a lot of sense to bring in a guy like Juju. I think they have the cap space to get it done. It's a destination that I like for sure. I can see it happening.
Yeah, I think it's much of the same reason I said I think he's going to go to a big market, and I think both Vegas and New York constitute as bigger markets. So I like both those destinations for Juju as well. Next up, I'm going to go with the Ravens for Will Fuller for much of the same reasons that Chris you picked. Marvin Jones to go to the Ravens. I think they need a lot of receiving help there. We saw it last year. We were all super hype about Hollywood Brown, and he just didn't work out for whatever reason. And I think Fuller's going to be a little bit cheaper. I think he's demanding a lot of money, but I think with his PED suspensions, his injury history, I think they could get him for a relatively good price. And I think Will Fuller to the Ravens just makes sense for a team in desperate need of some receiving help.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Ravens destination. It seems like he's got a pretty similar skill set to Hollywood Brown. I feel like they need that Marvin Jones Jr., that more of a possession guy. But I do like the destination because I think they have a need at receiver. The destination that I have, it's not something that's been talked about. It's already a destination where a former Texan has gone to. Actually, two former Texans have gone to. I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. And, maybe they can't make it work with their cap situation. I'm not really sure how that works. It's not a destination where they absolutely need a wide receiver. But I think building around Kyler Murray, I think Will Fuller is a perfect deep threat for them because Andy Isabella is clearly a bust and a terrible pick instead of DK Metcalf. I don't think Christian Kirk's that good. I think Larry Legend's going to retire as well. So I think the Cardinals, while it's maybe not the top destination that needs a wide receiver, I think for me, this is another guy where I'm just picking a guy. It's kind of like the Chris Carson situation. I don't necessarily think he's going to go there. It's just, I really want Will Fuller to go to the Cardinals. I think that would be an awesome destination.
Going back to his suspension, I think it's going to be 6 games, right? Unless he appeals
one game. It's all it is one game. He already had the entire. He already fulfilled almost. He fulfilled 5 of the 6 games. So it's whatever. Week 1, he's done, and then he's back.
Well, I think he should still go to a team where they're going to be fine without him if he had to miss a little more than that. And I'm going to pick a team that was already rumored to be in the market for him last year. I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. For the love of God, give Aaron Rodgers some weapons, and I think they should get Will Fuller and help him out a little bit.
Yeah, I really like that pick, Roman. The Cardinals, I feel like they got Christian Kirk. They kind of like Andy Isabella. I don't know.
He sucks.
But it does make sense. I think he'd definitely be an upgrade, assuming he stays healthy. And it also, for some of the same reasons that Roman, you had Fuller going to the Packers, it does kind of make sense for him to go into the Cardinals, where they have a team that has some insurance in case Fuller inevitably either gets injured or gets suspended or both.
Those hamstrings, gotta watch out for him.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll hop in now to Corey Davis, who. I don't know how. Again, I should probably have done a little more research in terms of how much cap space they have available. But I do think this is a team that desperately needs some receiving help, and it would not surprise me if they get a couple guys who are not the high-end Kenny G type of guy or Juju type of guys, but they're still a couple solid receivers. So I have actually Corey Davis going to the Baltimore Ravens as well. I think they're going to make a significant investment in the receiving core, either through the draft or through trades. And I think Corey Davis, coming off a really quietly solid season in Tennessee last year. I know AJ Brown had all his injury issues, but I think for large stretches of the season he outplayed AJ Brown, and I think Davis to the Ravens makes sense. So I don't know how much cap space they have, but I think it's a good fit for him there as well.
Yeah, it seems like you're just going with the shotgun approach here, with both Fuller and Davis potentially going. One of those two could potentially land at Baltimore. I definitely don't think both of them will. For me, there's 2 destinations I like, both in the same division. But the one I'm going to end up going with, because it makes sense, he's kind of a more prototypical one. He's got the size, he's got, the athleticism profiled as well. I'm going to go with the New York Giants. First time they've been on my board in terms of this. I think they have a need at receiver. Golden Tate is now a cap casualty. They need, that number 1 guy. I think Shepard's a good slot receiver. So he makes sense to stick around. I think Slayton is a good number 2 guy, but I don't think he's a number 1 guy. And I think Davis has a chance to be. I don't know necessarily if he's worth the contract that he's going to get, but I think it makes a lot of sense for them to they got to try to give Daniel Jones another weapon. I think Davis makes some sense.
I completely agree. I think someone is going to overpay just a little bit for him. I think the Giants are going to be that team to do it, considering where they're at in wide receivers. And they could draft one. Waddle may fall to them. But I think they're going to sign one, and Corey Davis makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's actually a really good landing spot. I wish I would have thought of that one myself, because they do need some help. And I think if he goes to the Giants, it's hard because he has had some injury issues. But if he stays healthy, I think that could potentially make them a surprise team. I mean, they almost made the playoffs last year. I think they could, and last year, they only won like 4 or 5 games. I think they could be a legit playoff contender, 7, 8, 9 wins this year if they get a guy like Davis. So I think that I really like that spot for him. But next up, Curtis Samuel. I'm going to be a little boring here. I think he's going to go back to Carolina. I think he had a really good year last year with them. I think he meshes with that offense well. So I think going back to Carolina just feels like it makes the most sense for him. Especially considering how he was kind of struggling there, and then he had a really good season last year in Matt Rule's first year as head coach. So I think him going back to Carolina just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, they do have a lot of receivers there already. I think he's kind of been rumored to be the odd man out of their 3-man receiving core because I think he's going to be I think he's getting a similar contract to Corey Davis in that $10 million range because of the way he played last year. I actually think it kind of screwed them out of re-signing him. But I have a perfect destination for him, and I think maybe Roman might agree with me in this. This is the other team in the division that I think needs a receiver, and that is the Washington football team. Going back to play with Ron Rivera, I think makes a lot of sense. They have some cap space to burn. They need weapons as well for whatever quarterback. I'm assuming they probably draft a quarterback or they sign one of these free agent guys. I think makes a lot of sense to have that. They got Terry McLaurin, that alpha number one prototypical receiver. They need that, underneath slot threat, another versatile guy that can take some handoffs, kind of like the receiver version of Antonio Gibson, where he's basically a wide receiver out of the backfield. Samuel's basically a running back at the wide receiver position. I think it makes a lot of sense for where their offense needs that underneath threat, and they've had a lot of guys cycle in and out of that role last year at least.
I definitely think Curtis Samuel is gone. I think he'll cost less than Corey Davis. And while both the destinations make sense, I think there is one team that we know very well needs some wide receiver help, and Tyrell Williams is not the answer. I'm going to put my Lions on the board for the first time today because I do think they're going to be in the wide receiver market. I do think Curtis Samuel makes sense, and they need help desperately. So let's put him on the board. Let's get him some help.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it, but I get where you're coming from. It just doesn't seem worth it for them to overpay. I agree where maybe it doesn't cost quite as much as Corey Davis, but I think he's going to be at least $8, $9, $10 million, and I'm not paying that for Curtis Samuel if I'm the Detroit Lions. I would much rather really just re-sign Kenny G for 20 personally. But I get where you're coming from. They definitely need the help, but I think they're going to get it in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I don't think the Lions are going to be very active in free agency, especially considering all the moves they made yesterday with all the not tagging either Okora or Galladay. But Samuel was a really entertaining player to watch last year with the Panthers, excuse me. So I think him going to the Lions, as a Lions fan, would be definitely fun to watch, even if the Lions as a whole aren't a great team. But I'll hop in now to Kenyon Drake. So again, a lot of this I based around like my rumored like universe scenario. So I have Fournette going to the Packers, not coming back to the Buccaneers. I think Kenyon Drake could be a nice pairing there with Ronald Jones in the backfield. I know they got Vaughn, they got some other guys there, but they're very much in win now mode. Especially, I mean, I think Brady, maybe this might be his last year. He might re-sign and have a couple more years, but they're definitely win now mode. And I think Drake, he had a really good stretch there with Arizona 2 years ago. Struggled with injuries and performance last season, and I think a change of scenery would really help. And I think a situation like Tampa Bay would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kenyon Drake is that great of a running back, to be honest. He's fine. He's nothing special to me. He didn't really prove in increased role that he could be anything special. This is tough because, like I said, I didn't really prepare for this beforehand, but I'm going to go with the Atlanta Falcons. It's really one of the only other open jobs. The only other potential destination I have is the Miami Dolphins, where he goes back home, and it'd be a lot cheaper than a guy like Aaron Jones, because I don't think he really played up the contract, or maybe he goes back to Arizona, but I don't think they really want him back, to be honest. But yeah, I'll go with the Falcons. It's an open job, kind of fits the Arthur Smith role. I mean, he's not Derrick Henry, but he's that big. He can take a workload, at least he proved last season. So a guy, that Arthur Smith is probably going to want, that 3 down back that can be on the field for a while.
I'm gonna be a little boring. I say he goes back to the Cardinals. I mean, they only have a whole lot there besides Chase Edmonds and Benjamin. I think they're definitely gonna be, I get not in the market for a running back. They might want to retain him, but another destination could be New England, could be San Francisco, who are losing a couple of their running backs. Um, I think I think those are all possible destinations, but I don't really see a big reason why Kenyon Drake will leave the Cardinals.
They don't want to pay him.
Yeah, I think
That's
that.
my reason.
Yeah, and I don't think it just didn't really seem like it worked last year. And if anything, I think they might be more content with like a Chase Edmonds
I
duo
either think it's
with some rookie or something like that.
Edmonds and a rookie is what I
Yeah, that's what
Edmonds and ETN would be a pretty exciting duo
yeah.
for me. I think that makes a lot of sense.
It's really
Or
unfortunate.
Najee.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because last year, I remember going into the season, we were all really excited because he had that nice stretch to end 2019. We thought,
Yep.
hey, maybe this will be a really good player for them, and just didn't really work out for whatever
He
reason.
screwed my fantasy team over, that's for sure.
Yeah, he screwed mine over. Screwed everyone's over, but hopefully he has a bounce back year though. Or like you said, Chris, maybe he's just not that talented. We'll have to wait and see. The final guy of our running back and wide receivers board is AJ Green. I actually have I think is an interesting landing spot. It's a team that needs some receiving help. I think, yeah, one of us already gave them a receiver. I think at this point in AJ Green's career, he's trying to get a ring. He very easily could stay with Cincinnati and finish out his career there, but I think he wants to get a ring. I think he's going to go to a team that's ready to win now, that needs some receiving help, that has a veteran quarterback coming off an MVP season, and I think he's going to go to the Green Bay Packers, staying in the Midwest but switching conferences. I think it just makes sense, and I think I don't love the Packers, obviously, because I'm a Lions fan, but I still think it'd be interesting to see Green in a better offense with a team that is good, and the Bengals obviously have not been good for many, many years.
Yeah, I mean, you see it already on the board. I already got the Packers. I think this is a perfect destination. Oh, AJ Green, he wasn't great last season. He's coming off a lot of injuries, but let's see what he still has in the tank. He's had a lot of really good seasons in the NFL. I think there's still some juice left potentially in him if he gets the right destination. I think this is the perfect destination for him to, he doesn't have the pressure of being a number one receiver. They don't desperately need him to be unbelievable. They just need him to be serviceable out here. And I think he can absolutely do that. If you need 700-800 yards and 6-8 touchdowns, I think that's a perfect destination for him. And he can provide some value for this team for sure on a cheaper contract, I think.
No, I definitely agree with you that he's going to a win now team, a team with an MVP level quarterback. But you both already gave this team a wide receiver, but I'm gonna jump in late. I'm gonna go with the Baltimore Ravens. Sticking in the division might get revenge on the Bengals for fun. I think the Ravens are gonna be wide receiver market, and I think Green makes sense.
Yeah, that's not a bad destination either. For sure, I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I actually had. It just might sound crazy. I actually considered maybe Juju Smith-Schuster going to the Ravens in division foe, but who knows if that'll happen.
That as well.
Okay, so we'll hop on to our final tab here. The defense, a few defensive players we wanted to predict where they're going to end up. First one is Hassan Reddick. I have him, so this is under the assumption that Von Miller is going to get bought out. There has been some rumored interest on both sides that Reddick will end up in Denver. So I think that's my prediction for this one. He could go back to Arizona. But I think Denver makes sense. Again, it seems like they want to win now, especially with John Elway there. He's not the GM anymore, but he's still kind of in charge. And I think if they lose Miller, that gives them an opening. And I think Reddick could fill that opening relatively nicely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good destination for him. Like I said, I didn't do a whole lot of research beforehand. I kind of just wanted to, make these predictions based. I didn't look up rumors or anything like that. But this is the first player I have going to the hometown Detroit Lions. I think he actually makes a lot of sense here. They need linebacker help desperately bad. This defense is awful. There's a lot of teams that desperately need defensive talent, and I think the Lions are one of them. They got to put bodies in places at some point. And I think Reddick, that sideline to sideline fast tackler makes a lot more sense compared to the sluggish Jelani Tavai that we've had for the last couple of years. So I think Reddick makes some sense ending up in Detroit if he ends up not really wanting a ring, more in it for the money. I think we'd be willing to pay him.
I actually have Detroit taking a different player on this board, but for Hassan Reddick, I think he goes to the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that doesn't really have a prime linebacker on their core, and I think that he's going to make the most sense on an up-and-coming team.
Yeah, I think all three of those are solid options for Reddick. It would be really cool if he comes to the Lions. It's not going to be a good team, but at least it makes the defense a little bit more watchable, I guess, maybe. But anyway, we'll go to Shaq Barrett now. I'm going to be pretty boring. I think he's going to stay in Tampa Bay, coming off the Super Bowl. It's weird because they kept Chris Godwin, so I'm not sure how feasible this still is, but I do think they're going to try and we see it all the time with teams. They're able to mess around with the cap and find money where it seems like it's not there. And I think Barrett was such a big part of their team this season, and I think he's a big fixture there in Tampa Bay. And I think it just makes sense for him to return and try to win another ring.
Yeah, I mean Barrett. I feel like to me he's going to go to a team with a lot of cap space because I think he's a guy that warrants a pretty big deal. There's a lot of good destinations for him on here that are desperately in need of a pass rusher. I'm gonna go for this one since there's a lot of other pass rushers. I'm gonna go with the Raiders. I think it's a very good destination. They definitely need that edge rushing linebacker desperately bad, and I think they're willing to pay this contract out to Barrett. They've been trying to cut some cap space. I think they're looking to make some sort of big splash in free agency, and Barrett instantly gives them a boost to their front seven, and he's one of the best. He might be the best player in this free agent class altogether in terms of his overall production. He's an incredible talent on the defensive side of the ball for sure. I really like him, and I think he's gonna make some team happy.
Yeah, it's been the big concern really whether the Bucs are able to retain all three of their big free agents in Godwin, Levante David, and Shaq Barrett, and they've already locked up two of them. So I think it might be actually feasible that can bring back Shaq Barrett. So I will go with the Buccaneers like you, Drew. I think the Bucs want to continue what they had from last season and keep the continuity as much as possible. I think Shaq Barrett would be a huge addition to retain.
Yeah, and actually, Chris, you mentioned Shaq Barrett going to the Raiders. I actually have Bud Dupree going to the Raiders because I think they're going to try and improve a defense. It seems like again that they're in win now mode. They've had really solid starts to the year these last few seasons, and then they just falter down the stretch in November and December. And I think I don't want to put all the blame on their defense, but there's definitely some holes to fill over there. And I think Dupree going over there to the Raiders just makes sense. And I think it would be a good fit there, much like you said. You think Barrett's going to be a good fit for the Raiders as well?
Yeah, I think anybody that puts the Raiders as in need for a front seven guy, honestly, anybody on the defensive side of the ball, I think I'm going to pretty much agree with. For Dupree, it's a team that we haven't really talked about a whole lot, but they have a lot of cap space, and I feel like they've been kind of getting ignored. I think maybe this was kind of my backup for Shaq Barrett. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think a team that needs some help on both sides of the ball for sure. They got a lot of holes. Maybe they could be in the market for an offensive lineman, which we haven't touched up on at all. There's a lot of good offensive linemen out there this year, and they could definitely be in the market for that as well. But I think Dupree makes a lot of sense. They're a team that doesn't have a great pass rush. Dupree, he's another one of those guys that's pretty versatile. You can kind of move him around the defensive front. Makes some sense to go there, and he's playing in Florida, where he smashed Matt Moore, if you remember that, a few years back when they played him, when it was the Steelers against the Dolphins. So, he's in state at least of the Dolphins, which I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting that you chose Jacksonville because you should be able to assume that since they have one of the best cap situations in the league, that be able to spend a lot of it. And this is the first time we're actually putting them on the board. So I might actually have to rethink some of that maybe in the future. But
right.
Bud Dupree, I think he goes to the Bills. I think they're going to restructure that defense a little bit, get a few key additions. I think getting a nice linebacker and Dupree would make sense for him.
Yeah,
I don't mind that.
Yeah, I think either of those are really good destinations. The Jaguars are an interesting spot because it's like I didn't really think about them when I was doing my predictions because like you don't really think about them that much, but they do have a lot of cap space, and if they get Trevor Lawrence and they got Urban Meyer, they're going to want to make some moves. They're going to want to win, so it makes a little sense. And I'm not going to send Ngakoue back to the Jaguars after that whole fiasco that happened last year, but I'm actually going to send to a team that's kind of similar in a similar spot with a young quarterback and Joe Burrow. Yeah. And I think Ngakoue to the Bengals makes a little sense. Their defense is not good, was not good last year. They need to make some moves. And I think Ngakoue, he didn't have, I remember he went when we had him going to the Viking, or we went to the Vikings last year. Everyone was like, oh my God, here we go. And he didn't really do that much. So I think he just didn't have a great season, and he ended up getting traded out of Minnesota as well. Yeah. So I don't think he's going to get a ton of money because of that, but I still think him to the Bengals. He's still a solid player, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think he's one of those, middling pass rushers in terms of what his contract is going to be. Maybe $5-7 million per year for a couple of years. Makes a lot of sense for the Bengals. They don't have to spend top dollar, but they potentially could get a pass rusher that's had a lot elite success in the league before with the Jaguars. I think this is a destination that makes a lot of sense. So I'm totally in lockstep with you, Drew. I got him going to the Bengals. I think it's a great spot for honestly for a lot of defensive players. I think this is a team that desperately needs defensive help.
Like you said, Drew, he was with the Vikings and then got traded to the Ravens. I have him staying in division, but not to the Bengals. I don't have him to the Cleveland Browns, who missed out on J.J. Watt, but I think they would like someone opposite of Garrett, and I think Yannick Ngakoue would be a good fit for him.
Yeah, I got nothing to say about that. I think that's a good destination as well.
I got the Browns making some moves on defense a little bit later, a few other players that we got to touch on, but not this guy, Matthew Judon. So actually, not to throw shade at you, Roman, but you mentioned this team had a good defense earlier on in the episode. I don't think they have a great defense. I think they need to make some moves, and I think Judon could be a potential filler there for them, for the Seahawks, I mean, and I think I think it makes some sense. They need to address some things on defense, and I think Judon going over there to Seattle would be a good fit. But what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, and this is where I have Denver taking a linebacker. I think Judon makes some sense if they don't end up with Reddick, like you said you saw rumored to potentially be. I think Judon to the Broncos makes a lot of sense, kind of filling that Von Miller role. They haven't had a lot of pass rush lately. I think Judon provides some good tackling, decent pass rush as well. I think he makes a lot of sense for them.
I was considering both those teams. I also considered the Jets, and I have them making a few moves later. But I will go back to being a little homer here. I'm going to put the Lions down for Matthew Judon, who doesn't have much edge help now that Romeo Okwara is gone, Everson Griffin's gone, or linebacking core sucks. I think they're definitely they have to walk away with some defensive help. I think Judon is a good free agent signing. He went to college in the state of Michigan, Grand Valley State U alum, and they're going to keep him. They're going to bring him home.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fun. But also speaking of the Lions, Romeo Okwara, this was pretty fresh because he just got they decided not to tag him yesterday. I think there is a world where he does end up back with the Lions, but I personally don't think so. It's hard to figure out where he could go, but I think a team that was in the J.J. Watt sweepstakes potentially could land him, and that's the Tennessee Titans. I think they could use some defensive help. Their offense was really good last year. Their defense was not great, and I think Okwara going over there to Tennessee, a good playoff level team. It'd be really nice to see him go there and get the success that he didn't have in Detroit. And Roman, looks like you agree.
Why does everybody have him going to Tennessee? I'm not really sure, but
I mean, they're gonna be losing on Clowney. I think they're gonna need a guy opposite, a good defensive player, and I think Romeo Okwara makes sense, and he's young.
Yeah, I think he makes a lot of sense to the New York Jets for me. That's where I have him going. I think another team with a ton of cap space, kind of a similar situation to the Jags, where they just need some talent on the defensive side of the ball to add to that a team that's void of a lot of talent. So I think Okwara, I don't know, man. I really see him in a Jets uniform next year. It's one of I'm very confident in this one for some reason. I don't know why it is. I feel like it's a good home for him, and he's not going to break the bank either.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, Roman, if you have anything to add on your Titans pick, but I think him going to the Jets makes sense, and going to the Titans makes sense. Like I said, this is still pretty fresh, so I was just trying to figure out where could he land. And I remember the Titans were in J.J. Watt talk. I don't envision them bringing Clowney back after last season, so I think him going to Tennessee makes a lot of sense as well. But we'll go into Carlos Dunlap now. I think this is a guy who, I mean, he's a good defensive player. I think he's going to go to a team that needs some defensive help, and that's the Minnesota Vikings. This is a team I don't think we talked about at all. And I think they are very much in win now mode. It seems like that this could be a make or break year for that coaching staff and front office. Their defense wasn't good last year. I know Kirk Cousins has popped up in some trade rumors, but it seems like they're not going to trade him, at least to start the year, because they want to win now. They want to save their job. So I think Dunlap going to Minnesota can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to cost a lot of money. So any team that doesn't have a lot of cap space, I think it would make some sense for. There's a lot of teams that I could see Dunlap going to because I think he could provide some. He actually was pretty good for Seattle last year, underratedly, not talked about a lot, but he definitely once they added him, their defense did improve a little bit. Like Roman, well, Roman was saying they're an all-world defense, but they're not that. But
I somewhat regret that statement since we started, but go on.
But anyways, I think, there's a lot of teams that make a lot of sense for him. I think one of them, this is a team that lost Everson Griffin last year, not the Lions, the team that initially had him. That's Dallas Cowboys. I know they don't have a ton of cap space, but I think they could afford a guy like Dunlap, and you can provide, they need some defensive help at some point. I think they're definitely, struggling with talent on the defensive side because they've used so much money on the offensive. But I think this is a low risk, high reward signing for a team like the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little short and sweet here. Your reasoning, Chris, with Romeo Quari to the Jets, I'm going to apply it the same way. They need any defensive help, and I think having a lot of cap will help them in the situations of getting just guys they want, and I think Dunlap will be a good piece for them.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the Jets, I think Richard Sherman going to the Jets makes a lot of sense as well with Robert Saleh there as the defensive coordinator. I didn't want to be basic, though, because I assumed a lot of people were picking him to go to the Jets. So I'm going to go pick the Raiders. I think he's a big personality. He's going to go to a big team. So I'm going to go with the Raiders, but I could very well see him going to the Jets as well, just because he's been such an advocate for Saleh, both the last couple off seasons where he's been rumored to be a head coach, and then also this off season where he finally got a head coaching job. So I think either of those teams make a lot of sense. And as I predicted, you guys both have him going to the Jets.
Yeah, I think this is a destination that makes a lot of sense for him. There's actually a lot of teams I could see him end up going to potentially. I mean, for one of them, I could see him going to the Cowboys. I think that would be a potential signing if he's going to take, I don't think he's going to break the bank either. The Cardinals, if he wants to stay in the same division like he has his whole career, I think the Cardinals are another team that can make a lot of sense. They need a cornerback really bad, and he provides some veteran leadership there. I think, he's going to be one of these, maybe he's not the best corner in the league anymore, but he's still a guy that provides some decent. He's going to give you plenty of energy out there. He's going to be a decent corner for you in terms of at least zone coverage now at this point. So I think it makes a lot of sense, as a number one on a bad team or a number two guy on a contender. So I think the Jets and the Raiders as a number one option make some sense.
Yeah, I got nothing to add here. I think that connection, it writes itself. I think it would be a good fit for him too.
All right, sounds good. Hopping now to Von Miller. So he's actually has not been officially released yet or bought out by the Broncos. But we still wanted to add him in here because even though it's not official, it doesn't seem likely that he's going to go back to Denver. But maybe you guys disagree with that sentiment. I actually have him going to the Arizona Cardinals. I think he's in this point of his career where he wants to get another ring. And I think adding him to a defense that already has Jones and Watt could be a really good. If he wants to he's already made his money. If he wants to take a lesser deal, go to the Arizona Cardinals and just be on a really, really good defense. I think I've been skeptical about the J.J. Watt signing a little bit, but I think Miller going there, I think that could be a really dangerous defense, and I think it catapults Arizona into maybe legitimate Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, I like the Cardinals pick. I'm not going to go with the Cardinals for my selection. I'm actually going to go with the team that is losing out on Kyle Van Noy, or they're going to be releasing him. I think the Miami Dolphins are a good destination for Von Miller. I think he fills that void really quickly. If he's still healthy, if he still has some juice left, I think he's definitely an upgrade over Van Noy. And I think, to me, it makes a lot of sense grabbing, a big name like Von Miller to a defense that is definitely up and coming. I think, makes them a little bit more formidable, and it makes some sense for a team that's looking to close that Super Bowl window, or open that Super Bowl window, you could say, in terms of, being competitive over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I actually had a bunch of teams that you could possibly go to. I think Carolina, the Giants, Jets, Cleveland. Yeah. I think all those are possible destinations, but I think he wants to go somewhere, like you said, Drew, where he can win as soon as possible, joining a good defense already. I'm not sure what their cap situation is, but I'm going to go with the Colts, who I think already have a stacked defense enough and could very well be in contention this year or next year, depending on what Wentz does. I think this is a good fit for him, and he's already joining some great defensive players over there.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I don't think he's going to go to the Colts, but I think it's a fun destination too. I do agree. I lean towards him going to contender, but I think all these teams are, right on the. I think these are three similar teams where that they have a lot. Like they showed some things last year. They're not perfect teams, but they're already looking to make moves, at least in terms of the Colts getting Wentz, the Cardinals signing Watt, and then the Dolphins have been in rumors for Deshaun Watson at least, and then Kenny G as well. So I think teams that are looking to get into that Super Bowl window, win now mode, I think Miller is going to go to one of those teams.
Yeah, and after all this, we're talking about all this, he's probably going to go back to the Broncos naturally. But it would be really fun to see him go to any of these teams, or even like a legit contender, one of those top tier teams. But I think if he goes to any of these teams, the Dolphins, they probably need to make some quarterback moves, maybe make a couple other moves, but they make all the moves we predicted them to make. That would definitely catapult them. And then if him just going to Arizona or Indianapolis, I think would definitely catapult them as well. But so this is, I think, our third to last player for the episode, Ndamukong Suh. So Suh, here's my reason. He got his ring. He's nearing the end of his career. And I think he's going to come home to the Detroit Lions. He was talking about how great the city is in some recent interviews. And I think him going to the Lions, finishing out his career with the team that drafted him, he's already made his money. He's already got his ring. I think we got some cap space, probably be able to give him a decent contract, and he can either finish off his career with us, or he can also get traded at the deadline or next year if it's a multiple year deal. But I wanted to pick a guy going to the Lions, and I think Suh going to the Lions would be maybe not a great fit, but I think it's nostalgic. I think it makes some sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying there for sure. I have him going back to the Bucks because I do not have them retaining Shaq Barrett. I think he's going to end up being the odd man out because he's going to take the most money to acquire or to retain, and I think Suh can be retained for a little bit less. I think he wants to come back personally. I think he will be back. That's just my opinion. There's a lot of good destinations that need pass rushers. There's plenty of other pass rushers that aren't on the list that you could have going to different teams. So I think he's going to go back to the Bucks.
Yeah, both those teams you mentioned were on my list as well. But just to be off the board, I'm going to pick a third team that I also had listed. I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are pretty much a clean slate on defense, a little bit with the exception of some rookies and young guys like Josh Allen and others. But I think staying in state with no state tax, I think he's going to like that. But I think those three destinations make the most sense for him.
Yeah, I like that one as well.
The tax situation is a really good point about Florida. Okay, so Patrick Peterson. So in my opinion, he's a Cardinal. He's been on some good Cardinals teams. He's been on some bad Cardinals teams. The fact that the Cardinals are finally turning the corner, similar to Von Miller, I think the Cardinals they're going to make it work. I think he's an Arizona legend. I think he's going to find a way to bring him back. So I have him going back to the Cardinals, but I'm interested to see if you guys think he's going to end up somewhere else.
Yeah, this is tough because I want him to go back to the Cardinals just for, he's been there for his whole career. He's been a great player while they've been not such a great team. But I don't think they're going to be able to make it work. I don't think it's worth their time to sign him to a big deal, or maybe not a big deal, but a couple of years. He's at least getting, $7-8 million. I don't think that's really worth it. But to me, I think a good destination for him, and this is you already had a corner going to this team. I think is the Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders. I think makes some sense for him. A team that's definitely in need of a cornerback. I don't know, man. I feel like he would fit well with the Raiders. That's my opinion. There's a lot of good destinations for him though out there.
Yeah, the team I'm gonna choose already, according to me, had a linebacker. I had Bud Dupree, but I think the Bills might be in the market for a cornerback outside of Tre'Davious White, and they very well draft one. But I think they have Josh Norman. I think he's gone. I think Patrick Peterson could slot in nicely for what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I don't mind that destination. I don't think they have a lot of cap room, and I think they're trying to sign some of their offensive linemen. Big issue, I think I don't think they're going to be able to add one of these big name free agents, but if they do, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think if he goes to a Bills or a Cardinals, it's going to be why he wants to compete and try to win and maybe take less money. But if he wants the bag, if he wants to get a good payday, the Raiders makes a lot of sense as well. But our final player of the episode is Mr. Jadeveon Clowney. Last year with the Titans, had an up and down year. He's really just had an up and down career, it seems like, for the most part. But I'm going to have him going to a team that he was rumored to be going to last offseason. It seemed like it was almost a done deal several times. similar to this offseason where it seemed like it was almost a done deal where J.J. Watt was headed to this team. And that's the Cleveland Browns. I think they're going to make a move here, and they're going to bring Clowney in. Even though he might not be the best player in the world, I think we saw him at his best when he had another elite man on the defensive line in J.J. Watt with Houston. And I think with Myles Garrett there, I think that tandem could be really, really dangerous for a Cleveland team that appears ready to win right now. So, Chris, it looks like you agree with me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Drew. This is one of my favorite destinations on the defensive side. I think Clowney's a guy that's not going to cost a lot of money, but the pressure's not really on him if he goes to the Browns. I mean, they have some cap space, so they can make a bigger splash than him. Maybe they even go after a Von Miller, which was a guy that I consider actually picking for the Browns as well. I think they're going to be in the market for another pass rusher, but I think with their current state, they're right on that. They're right on that, like at the outside looking in terms of being competitive. They're right there. They're just a couple pieces away. I think Clowney could be a piece that sets him over the top and makes him a true Super Bowl contender. So I think a very good destination for him.
Yeah, if I didn't have Ngakoue going to Cleveland, I think Clowney would make perfect sense. However, I'm going to go with a different team. I'm going to pick the New York Giants because their defense is struggling, and I think they're going to be in the market for one of these premier edge guys.
Yeah. I like the pick there as well. I think the Giants are underratedly a team that may try to make some splashes in free agency that we didn't really talk about a whole lot. I know I believe I had Corey Davis going there. Somebody else might have as well.
I did.
I think Roman did. Yeah. But it's a destination that I think they have some cap room that they're not real. I don't really know what they're trying to do because, they're going to have to pay Saquon soon as well, which I've seen they may not even bring back him on a 5th-year option. But they got to do something, man. They can't just stay in this, mediocre to bad state for the next couple of years until Daniel Jones needs. They have to make a decision with him. So I think this is a perfect destination for a guy like Clowney.
Yeah, the Giants were a team I didn't really think of when I was doing my predictions, but I'm glad you guys brought them up because they are in that territory where they got Barkley, they got Daniel Jones. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they just mediocre? And I think they are going to be active this offseason. And that's a big market too. The Giants are a big market in New York, obviously, and hopefully they can attract some guys. But overall, I think I liked everybody's picks. Is there anything you guys wanted to touch on here before we wrap this thing up?
No, I'm very excited. I think the free agency period, which is next week, I believe, is going to be extremely intense, and we're going to have a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to cover a lot of these teams too, except only a couple who are already set or just don't have the money, I guess, like the Chiefs. So, I mean, unless you're the Chiefs, you're fine. But other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a long episode, but I definitely had a lot of fun breaking down everything. And hopefully, I think if we each just get one prediction right, I think it's a win in my book, even though we made, 40-some predictions. As long as we get one of them right, we'll be good. But yeah, that's it for this episode. Once again, we're the Zone Defense Podcast. We have plenty of off-season content coming. In addition to this free agency and trade news and breakdowns, we also have NFL draft coverage and previews for the 2021 NFL season. Chris and I are also going to keep doing our weekly Zone Defense basketball hours as we All-Star break is just finishing up. I think they come back today. So we'll keep doing those as the second half of the NBA season rolls on. We get close to the NBA Finals and the playoffs. So be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and search us on Apple Podcasts. Smash that like button and drop your off-season predictions down below, as well as comment on our predictions, anything that you think were just completely crazy and off the board, or if anything that you agree with. We love reading all of those. And responding to them as quickly as we can. But thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
See ya.